Let's talk about migraines. If you've ever had one, or you know someone who has, you know it is so much more than just a bad headache. It's this all-consuming neurological event. For decades, scientists have been hunting for the root causes, and today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating piece of that puzzle. It's a huge question, right? I mean, it affects millions of people all over the world. Is it your environment, your lifestyle, stress? Well, what if a huge piece of the answer was actually written in our DNA the whole time? That's exactly the trail a group of researchers decided to follow. They had a hunch that specific, tiny variations in our genes could be a hidden risk factor for some people. And to find out, they had to start with the puzzle itself. So, to really get why their findings are such a big deal, we first need to be on the same page about the problem they were tackling. This is the migraine puzzle. Here's the absolute key. It's not just pain in your head. It's a complex neurovascular disorder. And that statistic, wow, the 7th most common cause of disability on the entire planet, that just shows you how incredibly important it is to find some answers. And this is where our genetic detective story really kicks off. For a long time, scientists have seen this powerful link between hormonal changes and migraines. And one hormone in particular, estrogen, has always been a key suspect. This helps explain why women get migraines so much more often than men, and it gives researchers a perfect place to start digging. Okay, so if estrogen is a trigger, the next logical question is, how does our body actually respond to it? Well, that investigation leads us directly to the body's instruction manual for its estrogen equipment, a gene called ESR1. Think of the ESR1 gene as the blueprint for building estrogen receptors, and these receptors, they're like little docking stations on our cells. When estrogen shows up, it docks right here to deliver its message. Now imagine there's a typo in that blueprint. It could totally change how those docking stations are built, right? Maybe making the cells way more or way less sensitive to what estrogen is trying to tell them. But here's the thing, our genes aren't all identical. They have these tiny variations, kind of like different spellings of a word. The researchers in this study zoomed in on 2 specific spelling variations inside the ESR1 gene. They're known as PvuII and XbaI. Their whole study, the entire thing, really boiled down to one question. Does having one of these specific spellings make you more likely to suffer from migraines? To answer that question, you need to compare the DNA of people with migraines to the DNA of people without them. So they designed a really focused study to do just that, concentrating on a specific population in the Jammu region of North India. So the team recruited 217 women for their investigation. And, focusing on a single, more genetically similar population was a really smart move. It helps reduce a lot of the other genetic background noise, which makes it way easier to spot a real signal if one's actually there. This is what you'd call a classic case control study. On one side, you've got 102 women who've been diagnosed with migraines, and they even broke that group down by those who experience visual auras and those who don't. On the other side, you have the control group, 115 healthy women with no history of migraines. The whole idea was to just comb through their DNA and see if those genetic variations showed up more often in the migraine group. The process itself was super methodical. First, they enrolled all the participants. Then they took blood samples to isolate each woman's DNA. After that, they used a lab technique to essentially scan the DNA and see which version of the PvuI and XbaI variants each person had. And finally, they crunched the numbers to see if there were any real, statistically significant differences between the two groups. So, the stage was set, the data was collected. After all that careful work, what did the numbers actually show? Did they find a genetic link? All right, let's start with the first genetic suspect, that PvuII variation. Did it have any connection to migraines? So this result was really interesting because of how specific it was. For migraines in general, this PvuI variant didn't seem to be a risk factor. But, and this is a big but, when they looked closer at only the women who experienced migraine with aura, a significant link popped right up. This suggests this particular genetic variant might not be involved in all migraines, but maybe specifically in the mechanism that causes the aura. So that was a fascinating finding, but the story doesn't end there. They still had that second genetic suspect to investigate, the XbaI variant. And here, the connection was undeniable. The results for the XbaI variant were significant right across the board. It was linked to the overall risk of having a migraine, and unlike the first variant, it was associated with both major types, migraine with aura and migraine without aura. This was the smoking gun they were looking for. And they could even put a number on that risk. They found that carrying one specific spelling of this XbaI variant was associated with nearly double the odds, 1.9 times greater, of having migraines. All of a sudden, this isn't just some vague association. It's a tangible, measurable increase in your genetic risk. So, the study found a clear genetic link. But, a single clue is only useful if it helps you solve the bigger puzzle. What does this finding actually mean for the millions of people who suffer from migraines? Well, the takeaways here are incredibly important. First, this study points to a specific genetic marker, that XbaI variant, as a likely risk factor. This doesn't just add a random fact. It strengthens the entire theory that the body's estrogen pathway is central to how migraines develop. And really, that's the ultimate goal of research like this. By understanding the precise biological mechanisms, we can start to imagine creating new, more targeted treatments that go right to the source of the problem. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought for the future. As we get better and better at mapping these genetic risk factors, we get closer to a world of truly personalized medicine. Can you imagine a future where a simple genetic test could help figure out who is most at risk for migraines, letting us create personalized prevention strategies long before the first debilitating attack ever happens? It's a powerful idea, and studies just like this one are the crucial first steps on that journey.